Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling self-awareness, but with a twist.
Ooh, a twist.
Yeah, we're looking at it from a Korean perspective.
Okay.
Our source is an article called "Are You Doing Self-Objectification Properly?"
Okay, catchy title, right?
Yeah, it really grabs your attention and it gets right to the heart of what we're exploring, this idea of
That's
"Who
so
come you
bad.
three,"
Oh,
which
okay.
translates to self-objectification.
Self-objectification.
Yeah, it's about stepping outside yourself and seeing your actions and impact clearly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why a Korean perspective? What makes their approach to self-awareness unique?
Well, this article is really grounded in the modern Korean work culture, which is known for being quite demanding and hierarchical.
Right.
So self-awareness becomes crucial for navigating those dynamics effectively.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. And the article starts with the author's own story about burnout, which I think many of us can relate to, especially in today's always-on work environment. Absolutely. And what's interesting is that the author talks about feeling pressure to accept all feedback, even if it wasn't constructive or helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. So how do we distinguish between healthy feedback that helps us grow and unhealthy feedback that can actually be detrimental?
The article doesn't go too deep into that, but it does highlight that unhealthy feedback often comes from a place of judgment or personal agenda
Mm,
rather than genuine support.
right.
Yeah,
That makes sense. And it makes me think about those times when I've received feedback that just felt off, like it wasn't really about helping me improve, but more about the other person's own issues.
exactly. And that's where self-awareness comes in.
Right.
It helps you develop that inner compass to discern what feedback is truly valuable and what you can let go of.
Right. I like that, an inner compass. It makes me think of those 6 characteristics the article mentions that people who lack self-awareness often exhibit.
Right. And while the article lists all six, the one that really struck me, especially in the context of work, is the difficulty accepting criticism.
Oh, that one in
Yeah.
particular.
Because in any work environment, feedback is essential for growth. If you're unable to accept constructive criticism, you're essentially shutting down opportunities to learn and improve it. Can really stall your progress both personally and professionally.
And it probably doesn't make you the easiest person to work with either.
That's a safe bet. The article also emphasizes how a lack of self-awareness can be especially problematic for those in leadership positions.
Yeah, because their decisions impact so many others, right?
Precisely, a leader who lacks self-awareness might make decisions based on a skewed perception of their own abilities, or fail to recognize how their actions impact their team.
It's like they're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, that outside perspective.
And the author, working as a product manager, really brings that point home.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about how self-awareness is crucial for assessing whether a problem stems from them or external factors, and for learning from their mistakes.
Right. That's a great example. And it makes me think about how self-awareness or lack thereof can impact every aspect of our work, from how we communicate to how we handle conflict.
Absolutely. It's not just about our individual performance, it affects the entire team dynamic.
So it sounds like self-awareness is crucial in the workplace, but the article also mentions that it's important for personal growth as well, right?
Yes, self-awareness is essential for understanding our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It helps us identify our strengths and weaknesses, recognize our patterns, and make conscious choices that align with our values.
It's about being in the driver's seat of our own lives, right?
Exactly. And that brings us to the self-assessment that the article provides.
Okay.
A quick check-in to gauge your own level of self-awareness.
Yes. The article poses 4 key questions. The first one asks, do I know my strengths and weaknesses?
And what's interesting about this question is that it's not just about identifying your strengths and weaknesses, but also about being honest with yourself about them.
Right, because we all have those areas where we excel and areas where we struggle,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And sometimes it can be tempting to downplay our weaknesses or overestimate our strengths.
Mm.
But true self-awareness requires a willingness to see ourselves clearly, even those parts we might not be so proud of.
So acknowledging our weaknesses is actually a strength in itself.
I would say so. It shows a willingness to grow and learn, which is essential for self-improvement.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
So the first question is all about having that honest self-inventory of our strengths and weaknesses. What's the next question in the self-assessment?
The second question asks, am I open to feedback?
Which, as we've discussed, is crucial for growth, especially in the workplace, but it's also important in our personal lives, right?
Absolutely. Being open to feedback from trusted friends and family can help us see blind spots in our relationships and behaviors.
It's like getting another perspective on ourselves that we might not be able to see on our own.
Exactly. And the article emphasizes that Being open to feedback doesn't mean blindly accepting everything everyone says about you. It's about listening with an open mind, considering different perspectives, and then deciding what resonates with you and what you can let go of.
So it's about being discerning with the feedback we receive.
Precisely. And that discernment is a key aspect of self-awareness. It's about trusting our own inner compass to guide us.
Okay, so we've covered the first two questions in the self-assessment, knowing our strengths and weaknesses and being open to feedback. What are the last two questions that the article poses?
The third question asks, do I recognize the difference between how I see myself and how others perceive me?
That's a really interesting one, and it gets to the heart of what self-objectification is all about, right?
Yeah.
Being able to step outside of our own subjective experience and see ourselves through the eyes of others.
Exactly. And this can be a challenging one because our self-perception is often influenced by our own biases and experiences.
Right.
We might see ourselves in a more positive or negative light than others do.
So how do we bridge that gap between our self-perception and how others see us?
Well, that's where feedback from trusted sources comes in again. But it's also about paying attention to social cues, being aware of our impact on others, and being willing to ask for honest feedback about how we come across.
It's about being open to the possibility that we might not always see ourselves as clearly as we think we do.
Exactly. And that humility is a key component of self-awareness.
So the third question is all about recognizing there might be a discrepancy between our self-perception and how others perceive us. What's the final question in the self-assessment?
The final question asks, can I objectively observe and manage my emotions and behavior?
This sounds like it's about self-regulation, being able to control our impulses and reactions.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our emotional triggers and developing healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with stress and challenging situations.
Right, because we all have those moments where our emotions get the best of us, right? But self-awareness helps us to pause before reacting, to consider the consequences of our actions, and to choose a more constructive path.
Precisely. And the article emphasizes that developing this ability to objectively observe and manage our emotions is a key step towards greater self-awareness.
So the four questions in the self-assessment cover a lot of ground, from knowing our strengths and weaknesses, to being open to feedback, to recognizing the difference between our self-perception and how others perceive us, to being able to manage our emotions and behaviors.
And the article suggests that if you can confidently answer yes to all four of these questions and elaborate on your answers, you're likely doing well in the self-awareness department.
That's reassuring, but what if we can't answer yes to all of them?
Well, the article emphasizes that even just recognizing the areas where we need to improve is a huge step in the right direction.
So simply acknowledging the importance of self-awareness is a significant starting point.
Absolutely. And the article also encourages us to be patient with ourselves. Developing self-awareness is a journey, not a destination.
It's not a race, it's a marathon, right?
Exactly. And just by engaging in this conversation, by exploring these concepts and asking these questions, we're already taking steps towards greater self-awareness.
That's a great point, and it makes me think about the article's focus on mindfulness meditation as a practice for cultivating self-awareness.
Yes. And it's not about becoming a meditation master. It's about cultivating that ability to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment, which is a key component of self-awareness.
So even just a few minutes of mindfulness practice each day can make a difference.
Absolutely. And the article also mentions journaling as another helpful practice, but with a specific twist.
Oh, tell me more.
Instead of dwelling on the why behind our thoughts and behaviors, the article suggests focusing on the what.
I'm intrigued why the focus on what rather than why.
The idea is to avoid getting caught up in those negative thought spirals and instead focus on objectively observing our reactions and behaviors.
So instead of asking yourself, why did I react that way? You might ask, what were the specific events that led up to that reaction?
Yes, exactly. It's about taking a step back and observing this situation without judgment, which can be really helpful for gaining clarity and understanding our patterns.
I can see how that would be helpful, and it makes me think about the times when I've gotten stuck in those why loops, which often just leads to more frustration and confusion.
It's a common trap. But by shifting our focus to the what, we can start to see our reactions more objectively and identify patterns that we might not have noticed before.
So mindfulness and journaling are two great tools for cultivating self-awareness, and we talked earlier about the importance of seeking feedback from trusted sources. But how do we go about finding those trusted sources? What should we look for?
That's a great question. The article emphasizes that trusted sources are those who provide constructive and honest feedback, but also those who have your best interests at heart.
So it's not just about the content of the feedback, but also the intention behind it.
Exactly. And that's where discerning those off-feeling feedback moments comes into play. Is this person genuinely trying to help me grow, or are they projecting their own issues or biases?
That's such an important distinction. So finding trusted sources is about looking for people who are supportive, objective, and genuinely invested in our growth.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that not everyone in our inner circle will be a good source of feedback. Sometimes it's helpful to seek out mentors or colleagues who can offer a more objective perspective.
That makes sense. And when we do receive feedback, the article emphasizes the importance of listening without getting defensive, right?
Yes, it's about approaching feedback with a growth mindset, recognizing that it's an opportunity to learn and improve, even if it's not always easy to hear.
It's about embracing the discomfort of growth.
Exactly. And the article uses a really interesting analogy to illustrate this point. It compares seeking feedback to receiving a gift.
Oh, I love a good analogy. Tell me more about this gift, Anel.
The article explains that some gifts are genuine and helpful, while others are essentially disguised bombs of negativity.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
Yeah,
So it's about being selective about who we allow into our inner circle and being mindful of the gifts they offer.
precisely. And it's also about developing that inner strength to deflect the bombs and to recognize that their negativity often says more about the giver than the receiver.
That's such an important reminder. We can't control what others say or do, but we can control how we react and what we choose to internalize.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of self-awareness. It empowers us to take ownership of our own growth and development, regardless of external circumstances.
So it sounds like cultivating self-awareness is not only about understanding ourselves better, but also about understanding our place in the world and how we interact with others.
Absolutely, and it's an ongoing journey that requires continuous effort and attention.
It's not a destination, it's a direction.
Right. Beautifully put. And even though this article focuses on a Korean perspective,
Yeah.
I think the insights and principles are universally applicable.
I agree, and it makes me wonder if there are any other cultural perspectives on self-awareness that we could explore.
That's a great question, and one that we can definitely delve into further in our next deep dive. But for now, I think we've covered a lot of ground in exploring this fascinating concept of self-objectification from a Korean perspective.
We have, and I think we've given our listener a lot to chew on.
I agree. And just by engaging in this conversation, they've already taken the first step towards greater self-awareness. It's true, simply acknowledging the importance of self-awareness is a big step, but the article also dives into why it can be so difficult, especially in a work culture like Korea's.
Right. It's not always easy to be objective about ourselves, especially when there's pressure to perform. The article actually lists 4 keywords that sum up common roadblocks to self-awareness.
Yes, and these really resonated with me. They are an excessive need for approval, an inflated ego, a tendency to avoid responsibility, and a victim mentality.
Whoa, those are pretty heavy. It's like the 4 horsemen of self-sabotage, right? Let's break these down a bit. An excessive need for approval. I can see how that could make it hard to see yourself clearly. You're constantly trying to please others instead of being true to yourself.
Exactly. You might end up making decisions or taking actions that aren't aligned with your own values or goals just to gain validation from others.
And that leads right into the next keyword, inflated ego. If your sense of self is based on external validation, it can be fragile. Any criticism can feel like a personal attack.
Right, and that makes it almost impossible to accept constructive feedback and learn from your mistakes. You're constantly defending your ego instead of being open to growth.
And then there's avoiding responsibility. It's easier to blame others or external factors for our setbacks than to own up to our mistakes.
And without taking responsibility, we can't learn from our experiences. We get stuck in a cycle of blaming and complaining instead of taking ownership of our lives.
And finally, the victim mentality. It's like seeing yourself as constantly being acted upon rather than being an active participant in your own life.
Exactly, and this can be really disempowering. You feel helpless and stuck, rather than seeing yourself as capable of making changes and creating the life you want.
So these 4 keywords are like warning signs. If we recognize these tendencies in ourselves, it's a signal to pause and take a deeper look at our level of self-awareness.
Absolutely. And the article emphasizes that these tendencies can manifest in different ways in the workplace.
Yes, it specifically talks about the importance of self-awareness for both leaders and team members.
Right? A leader who lacks self-awareness can create a toxic work environment. They might be micromanaging, dismissive of feedback, or make decisions based on their own limited perspective.
And on the flip side, a team member who lacks self-awareness can be difficult to work with. They might be resistant to feedback, blame others for their mistakes, or fail to contribute effectively to team goals.
Exactly. So self-awareness is really the foundation for effective teamwork and collaboration.
It's like the glue that holds everything together, right?
I like that analogy. Without that glue, everything falls apart.
So we've talked about the importance of self-awareness and the challenges that come with a lack of it. But what about solutions? What does the article suggest for actually improving self-awareness?
Well, it emphasizes that self-awareness isn't something you achieve overnight. It's an ongoing process that requires consistent effort and the right tools.
Okay, so what are some of those tools? Give me the cheat sheet.
The article highlights 3 specific practices: mindfulness, meditation, journaling, and seeking feedback from trusted sources.
We touched on mindfulness and journaling earlier, but let's dive a little deeper. Why is mindfulness so important for developing self-awareness? It's not something I would have immediately connected to the concept.
Mindfulness is all about paying attention to the present moment without judgment. And that's a crucial skill for self-awareness because it helps us to observe our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors as they arise without getting swept away by them.
So instead of being caught up in that inner monologue of self-criticism or worry, we can simply observe those thoughts and let them pass.
Exactly. It's like creating space between ourselves and our thoughts, which allows us to see them more objectively.
That's fascinating, and the article suggests that even just a few minutes of mindfulness practice each day can make a difference.
Yes, even small, consistent efforts can have a big impact over time.
And for journaling, the article has that interesting twist of focusing on what happened rather than dwelling on the why, right?
Right. It encourages focusing on objectively documenting our experiences and reactions without getting lost in emotional analysis or judgment.
Can you give me a practical example of how this might look?
Sure. Let's say you had a stressful interaction with a coworker. Instead of writing in your journal about how unfair they were or how upset you felt, you might simply document the facts of what happened. My coworker interrupted me in the meeting. I felt my heart rate increase and my palms started to sweat.
That's so interesting. It's like taking the emotion out of the equation and just observing the facts.
Exactly. And that can be really helpful for gaining perspective and understanding our patterns.
I can see how that would be a valuable tool for increasing self-awareness. And of course, there's seeking feedback from trusted sources, which we've discussed quite a bit. But the article goes a step further and talks about the importance of filtering out those who might be disguised as offering help, but are actually giving malicious or unhelpful criticism.
Yes, it's so important to be discerning about who we ask for feedback and to learn how to recognize those red flags.
So what are some signs that someone might not be a trustworthy source of feedback?
Well, the article highlights a few things to watch out for. One is a lack of empathy. If someone consistently dismisses your feelings or perspectives, it's a sign that they might not be able to provide you with the kind of supportive and constructive feedback you need.
That makes sense, and it makes me think about those times when I've received feedback that just felt off, like the person was more interested in putting me down than helping me grow.
Exactly, and that's a clear sign to step back and reevaluate that relationship.
Another red flag the article mentions is a tendency to focus on your weaknesses rather than your strengths.
Yes, constructive feedback should acknowledge both your strengths and areas for improvement. If someone is constantly highlighting your flaws and ignoring your positive qualities, it's a sign that their feedback might be more about their own insecurities than about helping you grow.
That's a great point, and it makes me think about the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who believe in us and want to see us succeed.
Absolutely. The article really emphasizes the importance of having a supportive network of people who can offer honest and encouraging feedback.
Because those are the people who will help us to see our blind spots, but also to recognize our potential and to strive for our best selves.
Exactly. And that's what self-awareness is all about, isn't it? It's about understanding ourselves fully, both our strengths and weaknesses, and using that knowledge to live more authentic and fulfilling lives.
I love that it's not just about being better employees or team members, it's about becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Absolutely. And the article even touches on how this concept of AKU is gaining popularity in South Korea, much like the recent interest in mindfulness in Western cultures.
That's so interesting. It seems like there's a growing awareness globally of the importance of self-awareness.
I think you're right. As the world becomes more complex and interconnected, self-awareness becomes even more crucial for navigating those complexities effectively.
And for building strong relationships, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. Self-awareness is the foundation for empathy, compassion, and effective communication, all of which are essential for healthy relationships.
So it sounds like cultivating self-awareness is not only beneficial for ourselves, but also for the world around us.
I couldn't agree more. It's a gift that keeps on giving, both to ourselves and to those we interact with.
And speaking of gifts, the article has this fascinating section about how the types of gifts we give others can actually reveal a lot about our own level of self-awareness.
Yes, it was such an unexpected but insightful point.
What's the connection between gift giving and self-awareness?
The article suggests that if we tend to give gifts that we would want to receive ourselves, it might be a sign that we need to work on understanding other people's perspectives and preferences.
So if I'm always giving my friends books because I love to read but they never actually read them, that might be a clue that I'm not really paying attention to their interests.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful way to assess our own level of empathy and awareness of others.
That's such a great point. It makes me rethink my entire gift-giving strategy.
It's a great reminder that self-awareness extends to all areas of our lives, even the seemingly small and mundane ones.
And it makes me wonder if there are other everyday practices that can help us become more self-aware.
Well, the article doesn't explicitly mention any others, but I think it's about bringing that mindfulness and intention to all of our interactions, both big and small.
So paying attention to how we communicate, how we react to stress, how we make decisions, all of these things can offer clues about our level of self-awareness.
Exactly. And one simple but powerful practice is to regularly ask ourselves reflective questions throughout the day.
Like, what kinds of questions?
Things like, what am I feeling right now? What's motivating my behavior? How am I impacting others? What can I learn from this experience?
Those are great questions, and it's amazing how just taking a few moments to pause and reflect can bring so much more awareness to our daily lives.
It really can. And as we become more aware of our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, we naturally become more attuned to those around us, fostering empathy and compassion.
Which creates a ripple effect, right? Our increased self-awareness can positively impact our relationships, our work, and even our communities.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful and transformative journey that starts with that first step of simply acknowledging the importance of self-awareness.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the multifaceted world of Sunbring Grisais, or self-objectification from a Korean perspective. We talked about the challenges of cultivating self-awareness, but also the incredible rewards that come with it.
We explored practical tools like mindfulness journaling and seeking feedback, and emphasized the importance of self-compassion and patience throughout the journey.
And we learned that self-awareness isn't just about individual growth. It's also essential for building strong relationships, fostering effective teamwork, and creating more harmonious communities.
Beautifully put. And as we conclude this deep dive, we encourage you to continue exploring these concepts and to embrace the ongoing journey of self-discovery and growth. It really feels like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic.
It's true, self-awareness is a deep well, and this
Yeah.
deep dive has given us a lot to think about, especially from the perspective of Korean work culture.
And what I appreciate about this article is that it doesn't just talk about the importance of self-awareness, it actually offers some practical tools for cultivating it. We've already discussed mindfulness journaling and seeking feedback, but I'm wondering if there's anything else we can do in our daily lives to boost our self-awareness.
Well, the article emphasizes that self-awareness is an ongoing practice, and there are small things we can do each day to strengthen this muscle, so to speak.
I like that as self-awareness muscle, so what are some reps we can do to build it up?
One simple yet powerful exercise is to regularly check in with ourselves throughout the day and ask some reflective questions.
What kind of questions?
Things like, what am I feeling right now? What's motivating my behavior in this situation? How might my actions be impacting others? What can I learn from this experience?
It sounds so simple, but I can see how taking those few moments to pause and reflect could make a big difference.
It's about bringing awareness to our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in real time, rather than just letting them run on autopilot.
That's a great point. It's like hitting the pause button on our reactive mode and giving ourselves a chance to choose a more conscious response.
Exactly. And as we practice this, we start to develop a greater sense of self-control and emotional intelligence.
Which are essential skills for navigating the complexities of modern life, both at work and in our personal relationships.
Absolutely. And the article even suggests that as we become more self-aware, we naturally become more empathetic and compassionate towards others.
Because we start to understand that everyone is dealing with their own internal world, their own struggles and challenges.
Right. And that understanding can lead to more meaningful connections and more harmonious relationships.
It's like that saying, be kind for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Self-awareness helps us to see those battles and to approach others with more understanding and grace.
I love that. And it reminds me of another interesting point the article makes about the connection between self-awareness and our choice of careers.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this connection.
The article suggests that the level of self-awareness required for certain professions might be higher than for others.
That makes sense. Some jobs require more interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence than others.
Exactly. For example, a therapist or counselor needs a high degree of self-awareness to effectively support their clients without getting caught up in their own emotional baggage.
Or a leader who needs to be able to inspire and motivate their team while also being able to recognize their own limitations and seek support when needed.
Those are great examples, and it makes me think about how important it is to choose a career path that aligns with our natural strengths and tendencies.
Because if we're constantly struggling to be someone we're not, it can lead to burnout and dissatisfaction.
Absolutely. Self-awareness can help us to identify those roles where we can thrive and make a meaningful contribution, both to ourselves and to the world.
So it's not just about finding a job, it's about finding our purpose.
Exactly, and that's a pretty powerful concept.
It really is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a sense of hope and possibility, even though self-awareness can be challenging to cultivate. It's ultimately a journey of self-discovery and growth.
And the rewards are well worth. The effort increased self-awareness leads to better relationships, greater career satisfaction, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of self-awareness, especially through the lens of Korean work culture. We hope this has given you some valuable insights and practical tools to enhance your own journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.